For the longest time, I always admired people who were always working. They had the packed schedules, they had the early mornings, they had the late nights. Hey, my name is Tabitha, and I am your textbook night owl. People who always have the I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality, the constant proving, the constant producing. I always thought that was ambition, and that is what success required. But now when I look at hustle culture, I don't feel inspired the way that I used to. I see exhaustion, I see survival mode, I see burnout, I see people selling themselves out, I see people being praised for abandoning themselves. And honestly, I no longer admire burnout culture just because it's learned how to market itself as hustle culture and being successful. Hustle culture taught me, and I think it taught a lot of us, to confuse exhaustion with value. Being busy makes us feel important or like we're being productive. We oftentimes think that exhaustion becomes evidence that we're serious about what we're doing, that rest feels like we're falling behind, that productivity becomes a part of our identity, that women, especially women of color like myself, are often expected to prove twice as much. We always have to go the extra mile to prove our place in the world, being the strong black woman. But the thing about that is, being strong can become a massive, massive, massive trap in the long run. Hustle culture has convinced us that the more we sacrifice ourselves, the more valuable we must be. And that's a lie that we tell to ourselves, that we reinforce. But the more that we live that way, the more that we need to start noticing what it costs us. I know I had to do that with myself, where I had to really get real with myself and see what it was costing me. It was costing me my mental health. It was costing me my sleep. It was costing me my health. It was costing me the stability in my relationships. And I just had to let that go because the cost wasn't just physical. You get chronic fatigue, you get emotional numbness, you get irritability, you get disconnection from God, you get disconnection from relationships, you get disconnected from your body. Your creativity starts to dry up. I know a lot of us out here, especially in the world that we live in, we're in more of our creative era now. So that creativity doesn't have space to grow and flourish and bloom if you're burned out, if you're exhausted, if you're fatigued. I mean, soul tired, not just tired as in you need sleep, but soul tired. You feel like you're always present in your body, but you're not really actually present up here. That's the thing. But burnout doesn't just take your energy, it starts taking your ability away from you to feel like yourself. That is one of the most frightening concepts to think of. When you really sit down and get real with yourself, you starting to lose yourself out of this chase of success is so scary. But it's a serious reality that we need to face when we really sit down and evaluate what our lives look like and asking ourselves, okay, where did we start noticing that the hustle was changing us, not just tiring us? And one of the reasons why I think this is hard to see sometimes is because hustle culture is praised so much, especially on social media in particular. It is magnified because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. We got the 75 hard, and we got the this, and we got the that. And even Snoop Dogg, he was like, last but not least, I like to thank me. And he goes down the whole list. He talks about the sleepless nights and long days. Now that's Snoop. Snoop has plenty of resources now. He wasn't always Snoop, but he has resources that have helped him be able to work through his life. And he's worked really hard, obviously. Do I condone Snoop Dogg? No. But for the sake of the example, that's what I'm talking about, where he hustled. Even Nipsey Hussle, who was a rapper, he said, grinded all my life, grinded all my life. That's even a song that he has. So it's interwoven into the culture about how the grind and the hustle and the this and the that is so important. We keep celebrating, though, what is usually unsustainable. There's this admiration for being booked and busy. Even I've used that terminology, to be honest. Online entrepreneurship, which that space is booming more than ever, But sometimes we glamorize exhaustion, though, and that's kind of a fine line to walk. People show the highlight reel, not the nervous system crash. Two things about that, though. Instagram, if you've been on Instagram any length of time, you can literally see that Instagram has had a space for highlights, literally in the profile banner. They're telling you, here's where you put highlights at. And as far as the nervous system crashes, the breakdowns, the meltdowns, we are starting to see a little bit more vulnerability around that now, but it didn't always used to be that way. There's kind of this cycle that happens where people will focus on their successes and all of that, and then a recession will happen or whatever, and then people kind of fall back into this, here's what my life is actually like. Because success stories rarely show the cost, this no days off culture. There's this achievement without peace, this impact of capitalism and survivalism, which can be hard to navigate. I'm not going to say that it's not, but you can live in a capitalistic world and keep it grounded and keep it personal. That's the thing. Because sometimes what we call discipline, I'm gonna need y'all to strap in for this. Sometimes what you and I are calling discipline is really just self neglect with better branding. Ooh, I know. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to come for you like that, but I had to. Let me run that back one time for the one time. Sometimes what we're calling discipline and what these gurus are calling discipline, so called, is really self neglect that's romanticized with better branding. What is that really? So, what do we use to admire that we need to look at differently? Because let me clarify, I am not saying ambition is the problem. Please, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I think there is a certain level of reasonable ambition that we all have within us if we dig into it. So please don't hear me wrong on that. Ambition is not the enemy, but self abandonment is. Two truths can coexist and still be true. Okay? Let that sit in your spirit for a second. Ambition is not the enemy, self abandonment is. You can still be ambitious and get that good 7 to 8 hours of sleep. You can still want more without destroying yourself and literally running yourself into the ground because sustainable success is what matters. That term again, that's been coming up, that's been a running theme on this channel, right? Discipline should support your life. It shouldn't consume it. You shouldn't feel overly consumed by discipline, but it should help you be able to move through life more smoothly because you do have some flexible structure in place. So discipline does have a place, but it needs to be placed correctly. And from the faith POV, God has never asked anywhere in any chapter, any verse, any book of the Bible for us to prove our worth through depletion. Nowhere. If anything, it's quite the opposite. He wants us to find our worth in how we serve Him, not on how we serve this world, first and foremost. So His view on worth couldn't be more opposite than ours, quite frankly. And from the nervous system perspective, you can't build peace from constant pressure. There's that saying where it's like, oh, diamonds are created from pressure. Yes, that's true. But even after a certain point of pressure, diamonds are going to break, they're going to shatter at some capacity or another. And it's no different with us. So the goal isn't for us to become less ambitious. That is not the goal whatsoever. The goal is being less willing to abandon ourselves in the name of chasing success and trying to keep up with the Joneses and the gurus and the this and the that. So, how is our definition of ambition changing because we want to build differently? We want to build simpler. We want to build a little bit softer. We want to build more stable, of course. So, focus on how we're going to build differently or even rebuild differently in some cases. In a previous video, we talked about how to rebuild without judging yourself or without coming down hard on yourself, but seeing it as more of pointing your life in the right direction that is healthier and that is more reasonable. So, what we need to admire now is people with boundaries, people who keep their peace, people who rest and recuperate without guilt. Without guilt. Yes, I know. What a novel idea. People who build slowly and sustainably, people who honor their own capacity, who honor their own pace, people who have success and have a softness and not this, again, manufactured softness that you see on social media. Manufactured softness has nothing to do with how much money you spend on your skincare routine. It simply doesn't. That's performative. People who are not constantly performing strength, even. That's also become very performative in this day and age, right? And people who can say no without explaining themselves absolutely to death. I've been guilty of this, especially as an empath who desires not to cause people any pain or any hurt and who wants to keep the peace reasonably. No is a two-letter sentence, and if people can't understand what that word means without pushing you into an explanation, then it's time for you to take a step back because you will stress yourself out more by trying to maintain optics with somebody who oftentimes is determined to misunderstand you to begin with. It's not your job to control other people's behavior or other people's responses. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're protecting your health mentally, physically, and otherwise. And if the word no upsets them, that's something they're going to have to deal with on their own. There's nothing you can do about that when you're making decisions that are healthy and that are stabilizing for you. I admire success that cohesively molds with people who prioritize their peace and their health and their wellness. People who define success beyond productivity. People who are willing to ask, okay, what is this costing me? People who stop glorifying exhaustion in their language, which is what we need to do as well. People that build recovery into their routines, practice saying no sooner and holding to that no without having to over explain, not using busyness as proof of worth or as a coping mechanism, because we do that as well, where we will say, oh, I've got this to do, I got that to do, but really we're avoiding coping with something that we need to really deal with, or we're avoiding certain conversations that we need to have. We need to stop doing that and really get real with ourselves about where we really need to look a situation in the face and deal with it, even if it's a situation between our own ears. And we can choose what rhythms we actually want to sustain. That's the thing. Oftentimes, we're wanting to choose rhythms of somebody else, but we are not choosing rhythms that do well for us. And that makes all the difference in the world. Now, believe you me, I am not against hard work. I'm not against ambition. I'm not against building something that's meaningful. Please do not mishear me on that. But what I am against now is the version of success that requires and forces you to become disconnected from the Lord, your body, your peace, your faith, your relationships, and mainly from yourself. Because if the only way to maintain a life is to constantly abandon yourself, then maybe that life needs to be rebuilt and reframed and streamlined. I no longer admire burnout culture because it looks glamorized and romanticized. I just don't. I admire a life that is fruitful, that is peaceful, that is honest, and that is sustainable as a whole. And that's the kind of life that I'm building now. That is the life I am trying to build for myself, not trying, am building for myself even now. If this conversation resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's something that you used to admire about hustle culture that you see differently, right? I'm a millennial, and most of my audience is going to be millennials and Gen X. So we're a little bit older now in life, and we see things differently than we used to see in like our teens and 20s. So, what's something that you see now, a little older and hopefully wiser, that you see differently when you were in your teens and 20s? And if you do happen to be rebuilding your life after burnout, grief, or life disruptions, I would love for you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can continue having conversations like these. I'm also going to be uploading the audio from these videos into podcast form, audio only, for those of my millennial and Gen X women who are on the move. I know we're here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes we don't always have the time and space to watch a YouTube video. So I'm going to start uploading these into podcasts, which I'm super excited about because I've always wanted to have a podcast. And so you can listen to it on your early morning commute to work, in the afternoon during that mid afternoon slump when you're like, oh, I'm so over it, or in the evening when you're fixing dinner or winding down for bed. And it's going to be called Rooted Conversations with Tabitha Howard. So I will get those uploaded very, very soon for my auditory friendly folks. All right. Thanks for stopping by today, and we'll talk soon. Peace.